Alright, video response to this Javier guy from Vlogger Heads. We are not going to get along. I listened to his video halfway through and I couldn't listen to it anymore. So I decided, well, I'm just going to make my video response and hell with it. Screw editing it, screw anything else. We'll just go through the whole thing. So this is going to be like a half hour. But, if you're interested, you listen. Otherwise, go off, find something else to do. But these are important arguments that are in here. They're the root of what human beings aspire to be.
It's becoming more and more clear that the path our country is taking under the current administration and laws that are being passed is a path to socialism.
What a crock of shit. We were on the path to socialism in the 70s when the tax rates were twice as what they are now, and when wages were 3 times what they are now, when a man could have a family and he could support that family in a comfortable middle-class life. Come on, get real.
And to me, personally, that is a very scary thing. It's a very
you're very scary to me personally.
Scary step. It's a very scary direction to take. I'm not going to tell you anything that I know from history books. I'm going to tell you stuff that I know from experience.
Yeah, great. That's really a real logical thing to do. Handle a really touchy subject, a very, very important subject to human civilization based on crap you just pull out of your personal ass. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And why it is that I fear the laws and the direction that our country and the politics that our country is currently taking moving forward.
Yeah, what laws? There hasn't been any laws yet. The only thing we've done so far is bail out a lot of millionaires.
None of my comments are really directed against the current president because he's just one person, but rather the politics that are being passed.
Yeah, the president was elected because right-wing loonies that you would probably vote for got into office and started trillion-dollar wars in other countries and started passing bills that say you can't say this and you can't do that, and we're going to watch whatever the fuck you do, and we're going to call you a non-human, put you in a jail in goddamn Cuba of all fucking places.
Laws and the politics that are being passed into fruition. As many of you may or may not know, it doesn't really matter. I am originally from Cuba. I was born there. Communist Cuba. And my parents did a lot to get us out and here.
Yeah, well, why? Why'd they do that? You should have explained that part.
We actually got out through... we went through Spain and lived in Spain for 2 years until we received our visas here, and have lived here since then. I've lived most of my life here, and I have become a citizen of the United States, and I'm very proud of that.
What was your family doing before Castro? Were they one of the Batistaites, maybe?
I am, by the same token, saddened again by the fact that this direction that we're taking very much scares me because it reminds me of...
Yeah, well, you make me want to puke, okay? Idiots like you just talking this crap like, oh, human beings have to be animals and human beings have to have this competitive thing and they have to inherit their fucking life. Birthright, yes. Let's define the merit of a human being based on who he's born to. Puke.
What happened in Cuba. And what the system that is in place there and was slowly put in place there did.
Yeah, then slowly put in place there, right, through every obstacle the giant American empire could put in its way. What Cuba is has nothing to do with any principle or any ideology or anything else. It has to do with what something becomes when something declares a Cold War against it for 30 fucking years.
To people. People that were like you and me. The common folk.
Oh, bullshit. What are you talking, common folk in Cuba? We know what Batista was. We know what Cuba was. All right? It was owned by the 1%. All right? And they used the rest of their population as slave labor, period. It was disgusting. That's why there was a revolution.
Now, socialism and communism are not exactly the same. I think they're like one step away from each other.
Okay, fascism and free market conservatism are just, they're the same thing almost. They're just one step away from each other.
However, they're close enough so that, they're close enough in theory so that...
Yeah, you know what? Your philosophy is close enough to in theory? Monarchy. That's right. It's theoretically the same fucking thing. That's right.
We can say that if we look at communism and we read the Communist Manifesto,
which I bet you haven't done,
in theory, it sounds wonderful, and it does. If you haven't
bullshit! If you read the damn book, it give you a goddamn headache.
Read it, read it. Everybody is equal. There are no classes. There are no rich. Everybody.
That's really not the point of it. There's no obligation to birthright. There's no obligations to some sort of thing beyond you producing to your maximum potential and serving needs to its best use.
Has the same. Everybody has rights to health care for free education.
But whatever. I don't think that's in. I think Karl Marx wrote, to tell you the truth. But regardless, let's just continue on, because this is the bullshit, the constant and incessant bullshit. The whole idea of socialized healthcare didn't show up until about 20, 30 years ago. I mean, come on, get serious, fella.
All these things that when you read about them and when you actually learn, how communism supposedly works, it's awesome. It's wonderful. Why would anybody not embrace it? And yet, what happens is human nature gets right into the equation and causes that system to fail.
It causes the system to fail. Cold Wars, that's what does it. The United States empire, living off of its legacy wealth, its wealth it made from slavery and exploitation of immigrant labor, then the exploitation of South American continent, it gains a huge mass of money and power. And what does it do? It goes out through the rest of the world and it tries to find other governments to fuck with. All right? We just did it in Indonesia. We fucked with them because they wouldn't play with the international corporations. They were going to try to do something on their own. Okay? And our bankers took care of them. All right, that's the game we play. So don't sit there and talk like there's been the real world experiment has been done and it's been proven. Nothing's been proven. Absolutely nothing's been proven, but that rich, greedy bastards will resort to anything to maintain their control and exploitation over the fucking world.
Every single time, if you go back and study every nation, every country that has tried communism, it's been a dire failure.
Yeah, again, you're gonna keep saying something's happened when it hasn't fucking happened. That there's some sort of blueprint on the wall, and they all followed the blueprint, and the blueprint failed. That's not what took place. If we gave Castro for the last 30 years free right to exploit the American market as the Batistaites did, okay, they were getting very rich off Americans bringing their money to gamble and party at the beaches and smoke cigars. Now, if we gave Castro that same resource, that same black gold kind of green gold kind of thing, big lights, Las Vegas, if we gave him all that back, okay, Cuba would be Kuwait, Cuba would be Badai or some other, the money would be flowing out of that place.
What happens with communism is not that everybody has the same, or I should say, everybody does end up having the same nothing. Everybody ends up poor.
Yeah, well, that's just it's just such a lie. I mean, for all the gripes and complaints, like I said, I'm not here to defend communism. I have no empathy for dictatorships whatsoever. Okay, democratic socialism, yes. Communism, fuck that bullshit. Any leader who's afraid of the people is an asshole, in my opinion. Castro, you know he would have gotten elected if he had free elections, okay, but he didn't do it because he knew there would someday that maybe he'd have a policy that would really piss the people off, and then he would get out of office and the whole game would be over. All right, and he wasn't willing to take that chance. But that's a whole other issue. Look, you can't deny the practical fact, and the practical fact is that people have been elevated and countries have done amazing things. The Russian Empire, okay, it was a damn superpower. All right, and it did it in 1/3, 1/25 of the time it took us to do it, and they didn't have nearly the same exploitable labor that we had. So bullshit on you.
There is poverty across the entire people. Why is it so? Because the leaders and the people that are put in power become greedy, or not become greedy. We are, by human nature, we are greedy. Humans are two things. We're greedy, and we're also lazy.
Yeah, whatever. That's your definition of what a human being is. Okay, a human being with a little bit of intelligence is neither. So that's just bullshit. We're by nature nothing. We're by nature owners of our wives. You're going to tell me that's the natural order of things, and we somehow now are unnatural because we've recognized their humanity? So bullshit on you. We can be anything we want to be. It's all a matter of a simple switch inside our psychology.
And what communism does is it creates a magnet for these two human weaknesses and human conditions. For the greedy, the folks that are in power, they take over everything. And then communism.
Again, nobody on this website is advocating communism. So why are you arguing communism? You started your fucking video using the word socialism, and now all you're talking about is communism. Like they're the same fucking thing. They're not the same fucking thing. So deal with the individual aspects of social policy. Okay? Deal with healthcare. Deal with rational working man incentives. Okay? Eliminating the extremes on the top and extremes on the bottom. Like what would be the horror of having the lowest paid 8-hour employee paid $30,000 and the highest paid $300,000. What would be the horror of that? Plenty of incentives still, plenty of room for people to want to improve themselves. What would be the horror of eliminating birthright inheritance, at least at the extreme levels, putting $1 million cap on it? What would be the horror of that? Explain the communist horror of that. Explain where that experiment has taken place, you fucker.
They owns everything. Even the children. They even own the children. And yes, you get free education, but as part of that free education, you're indoctrinated into the system, into communism, and into whatever dictatorship has thereby formed.
Oh, yeah, and the same thing doesn't happen in America with their little true blue and their red, white, and blue and their flags and their Boy Scouts and all the other bullshit propaganda that goes on in this fucking country.
Dictatorships form in communism because, again, it's a magnet for these human weaknesses and faults.
It's one of the distinctive characteristics of communism is dictatorship. So, because it's a complete controlled society, all right, and it's controlled beyond people exercising their judgment and how the system should be run. Yes, so just use those words. It's no fucking problem. I don't think there's really such a thing as democratic communism.
Communism is very idealistic, and that's why dictators basically thrive on communistic systems, because people that believe in it have an idea of
was Batista a communist? Was he?
A perfect world where everybody's treated equally, where there are no classes, where there's no super rich, where there's no poverty, where there's no homeless, where everybody gets free health care, all of that stuff. And they'll promise you these things, and then
and they'll deliver them. I mean, there's a whole bunch of European countries that have a lot of those social policies. They have health care, and they have maternity leave, and they have a good minimum wage, and they have lots of things, and they're not crumbling to pieces, at least not any more than we are.
Time goes by, and it's put into practice. Then the corruption occurs, and the totalitarianism occurs, and then it's kind of like a domino effect, and then...
Yeah, well, look, I can make the same argument. Okay, you have your free markets, you have your consolidation of wealth, and your Rupert Murdochs own all the media, your Bill Gateses own all the technology. Like we can draw the same scenario. Who would I rather live under? Okay, a government dictatorship or William Randolph Hearst? I mean, if I had my fucking choice, I know what I'd pick.
The liberties are taken away, the freedoms are taken away from the people, and before you know it, you cannot even complain about a system that you thought was going to be good.
Well, how many people did Batista throw in jail for opening their mouth in Cuba? Fuck you, stupid argument.
In Cuba right now, you may be able to get, you're able to get free health care, but it's the worst health care you can get.
Oh, yeah, well, the worst you can get is probably better than the no health care 50 million Americans are getting.
And to those people that argue here in the U.S., that, like Michael Moore, free health care in Cuba, well then why don't you go over there and get your health care, you and your family and those that you care for?
Because he's an American, he's living off our legacy wealth like the rest of us are, and yes, he's a selfish bastard too, like the rest of us. But considering what Cuba is, considering its absence of any resources, it's the absence of any kind of gold in the ground like we have here, its capacity to have, states covered with wheat, fuck you. Everything's coming from a different place of capacity. You can go to the Congo and it might have the most great days in a row or some other kind of bullshit, or you might be able to sail your yacht up through the perfect river or something. But maybe it's not worth it if you're going to get fucking malaria.
Because it's the worst.
And you know that from personal experience, right? That's something you pulled out of your personal experience ass. You were in Cuba and you've seen their healthcare system and you've been a victim of their horrible healthcare system? I don't think so.